It's time for the Senate to come back to order. Hope everybody had a good lunch. Thank you, Pro Tem, for, if you get a chance, thank you, Pro Tem, for providing everybody with lunch today. Senate will come back to order, and we'll hopefully, if our author is available here. Are you ready, Senator? Senate Bill 57. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 57 by Senator Hickman of the 4th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to state government so as to authorize and provide for the regulation and taxation of sports betting in this state. The Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach of the 21st District Chairman. Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 57, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to state government so as to authorize and provide for the regulation and taxation of sports betting in this state, to provide for additional powers and duties of the Georgia Lottery Corporation, to change certain provisions relating to the shortfall reserves maintained within the Lottery for Education account, to provide for the Georgia Lottery Corporation to engage in certain activities related to sports betting. That completes the order, Mr. President. Oh. Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others offer the following amendment, Amendment 1, to amend Senate Committee substitute to Senate Bill 57 by adding the following on line 347 after 5027-144, and such regulations governing the treatment and aftercare of horses shall consider and utilize standards. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 4th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's great honor for me to speak about Senate Bill 57. I first of all would like to thank the senator from the 32nd, the senator from the 24th, senator from the 21st, senator from 56, senator from the 13th, senator from the 42nd, senator from the 14th, and senator from the 19th for giving us a friendly amendment on this. And as the secretary stated a few minutes ago, many of you, and I'll get into the bill in just a second, many of you are not familiar with something called the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act, but that was actually passed by Congress 2 years ago and signed by President Joe Biden, and been funded. But all this has done is to put more arms around the protection of these animals and all. So let me remind you that many of you that were here last year and the year before, that we actually passed a sports betting bill with 41 votes a year or so ago, and we also passed a horse racing bill with 34 votes. Now, both of those required constitutional amendments, so that was some of the issues. But this is a very clear and equitable bill. So the main thing on this bill is this bill treats all sports as the same, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, Atlanta Hawks or horse racing, is all the same. It allows the Georgia Lottery, and this is where we've been working on this thing so hard, is in the Georgia Lottery right now. The lottery prohibits pari-mutuel betting and prohibits casinos. Okay, it does not prohibit the fixed odds betting, which we were talking about here with sports betting and with the horse racing. So sports betting is deemed a lottery game. Let me say that again. Sports betting is deemed a lottery game. And the permits, there's going to be 3 tracks for the horse racing people. There'll be 3 tracks, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. The difference between Senate Bill 57 that we're giving to y'all today and others, and maybe another bill in the Senate and a horse sports betting bill, is that Senate Bill 57, listen to this, Senate Bill 57 creates jobs. When you just bet on sports on your phone, there's basically no jobs being created because you're doing it right on this. And so the Senate Bill 57, because of the potential of 3 racetracks in Georgia, will create, if you remember we talked about this last year, it will create up to 8,500 jobs, according to our economic impact study, and have over $1 billion economic impact. And for y'all, most of y'all that in rural Georgia like myself and Senator Sims, this is important for rural Georgia. You know, this is farming, agriculture jobs. Horse racing is legal in Georgia. There's many tracks already, but this allows it to have regulations around it, put our arms around it, and it allows the Georgia Lottery to create a gaming commission which will regulate the industry and protect horses in Georgia. As I stated earlier, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act was signed by President Joe Biden a couple of years ago, and that because of our great senator from the 32nd who brought this out. That's the reason the friendly amendment's here. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question. I'll give you an answer also. Will this bill authorize casinos? Let me tell you, the answer is a big no, N-O, okay? It will allow you to bet on horse racing in Georgia, but no casinos and no pari-mutuel betting, okay? What is fixed odds betting? Fixed odds betting is that when you make a bet, whatever amount the odds are at that time, that's what your odds are at payoff. Pari-mutuel betting is the more you bet on a particular item, the lower the odds get. Right now, all the betting that many of you, I shouldn't say many of you, but I know some of you do this, bet on sports on your phone. And for you got contacts in Tennessee or Florida, like I do, those are fixed odds bet. Okay, just like and you'll be able to do this just like we currently are betting on the Falcons, the Braves, the Hawks, NASCAR. You'll be able to bet on Tiger Woods at the Augusta National, those type of things. More important, just as important here, and many of y'all have asked me about this too, there's no off-track betting. So you won't have a place right across the street out here that you got a bunch of simulcasting going on and you'll be able to bet. That won't happen. It's only at the tracks. And our experts estimate that revenues from these sports and all will probably 90% of them come from outside the state of Georgia. You know, we got 11 million people in Georgia. We got, 300 million people in the United States. Everybody in Georgia, everybody in the United States is looking at us and wants to be a part of us. Again, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. An equine industry has existed in Georgia for many years, but there is no incentive for the owners, breeders, to breed and foal in Georgia. Now, many people, including myself, we raise our animals in Florida, horse in Florida. We transport them to Kentucky, right up 75. We breed them, sell them in Kentucky, take them back to Florida, and we race them in Florida, Kentucky, New York, those type of states. Thus we actually having millions of dollars that leave the state of Georgia each year for this. Again, let me mention, fully understand it. Again, our bill, Senate Bill 57, will be controlled and managed by the Georgia Lottery. All sports are treated equal. In one of our committee meetings, somebody brought up about high school sports. There is nothing in this bill, and we would never let anything in this bill allow to be bet on high school sports. But I was glad to ask the question. No casinos. Remember we said that. Fixed odds, not pari-mutuel. 8,500 jobs, $1.1 billion economic impact. All money's in the lottery, Georgia Lottery. Our experts also estimate that anywhere from $250 to $300 million a year is additional money that's going to the lottery. Now, what does that mean for us? Many of y'all have sat in our committees that Senator from 45th and I have chaired, and you've heard the stories about our pre-K not being fully funded, and you've heard the stories about our children not attending pre-K. This will be additional money for that, and it also will be additional money for other universities and all, and I'll get into that in just a second. Mentioned to you about the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act. Sports betting is deemed a lottery game. Again, we have an opportunity to create an industry with 8,500 jobs and $1.1 billion economic impact. This is very important. You know, all the economic jobs and all we've had announced in Georgia the last several years, you know, had significant tax credits, had significant tax incentives, had in some cases no property taxes. This bill provides for no tax credits, no tax incentives, and no discounted property taxes. These will stand on their own. The senator from the 15th and the 2nd and the senator from the 5th has helped me a lot on some of this. But one thing we need to address is that because of their help and working with us, we have a lot better language in this bill for minority businesses. And we addressed that in the committee meeting, and Senator Rahman was the first one to bring it to my attention. We addressed it, and we expanded it for minority businesses. Also, there's been some talk about needs-based funding. Our bill goes even further than that. Our bill puts limits on reserve fund for lottery. So more money, so the reserve fund for the lottery will have less money in reserve, so it will force more money out of the lottery to pre-K and possibly to more university funding. So I would like to thank those senators for helping us work that out. Thank y'all, and I really would appreciate you voting for Senate Bill 57. And Mr. President, I will take questions.
Senator from 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir, I do.
Senator, one of the things that a lot of people are concerned about is the fairness of it, the impact, the economic impact that flows back throughout the whole community. And in that, couched in that, is the needs-based idea that would flow to all corners of the revenue that flows from it. What is your take on that? Is there going to be an attention paid to that, or how does that work? Yes,
sir. What's going to happen in this? Actually, in the lottery right now, the language in the lottery is that the shortfall reserve fund is based upon 1 year, 50% of the net proceeds of 1 year. Okay. So our bill has got a provision in it that said the net reserve fund, shortfall reserve fund, will be based on the average of 3 years. So theoretically, we're going to have less money in the reserve fund, which will push more money out to the pre-K and the needs-based funding and the university system.
Senator, further you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
In another area, there's a figure, I believe, of $1.1 billion revenue, as opposed to some conversation I've heard about lower that expectation to like $50 million. What makes you optimistic that it will reach that $1.1 billion figure?
Well, Senator, we actually hired Georgia Southern University last year before last, I've yet to do an economic impact study for us. And that's based upon their numbers. And we've actually compared their numbers to what's happening in Indiana and Kentucky. And our numbers are very conservative compared to what Indiana, for instance, last year, their economic impact was over $2 billion, is what I read.
And further, one further question about the 8,500 jobs approximately. What is going to be the attraction? What's going to make it reach that level?
Well, obviously,
I don't know that much about horses, so I'm trying to figure out how would that work.
Yes, sir. Obviously, we've got a strong agricultural industry in Georgia now. As we well know, it's the number one industry in our state. And what this will do, it's not an immediate impact. It's not like it's not here today and it's going to be here tomorrow. Just like any other business, it will take time for it to grow. But as this industry grows, the agricultural need for the farms that Senator Watson over here, Senator from the 11th has to grow hay and grow feed and that type of thing is going to grow more and more. And of course, the horse industry is based a lot on shavings and wheat straw and that type of thing. And of course, the senator from 24 is going to be able to sell more hay to them. And so that's where all this comes from.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the question.
Senator from 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does my friend yield for a question?
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.
On an event that's for a horse racing event, who sets the odds? Was that going to be done by the Georgia Lottery?
No, sir. What it would do, it would be, as I understand it would be just like this, just like a football odds and all that right now are set by the FanDuel or the DraftKings type people. The odds will be set by those people.
So a booking agent would set the odds?
I don't know if that's the type. I don't know if that's the type word you use or not.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Senator from 21st.
Senator Yield,
Yes, sir.
back in 2012, we cut funding for Hope Scholarship, and that really did create a need for needs-based. But now that we're fully funding Hope, and then with this extra $1.1 billion, we will be able to fully fund not only Hope but pre-K. Wouldn't that make needs-based a moot point?
Yes, sir. It seemed to me like it would, and I think I think through a lot of our stuff, our committee meetings, we really are zooming in more and more. And not to say that education has not all been important. It's extremely important. But I think we're finding more and more about how our children are being challenged and the literacy rates are low. So this will just allow more money to go through the lottery and into our children.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, I yield the will.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank y'all. Favorite vote on Senate Bill 57.
Recognize Senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill brings a lot, and I've spoken about it a little bit, but I want to remind us of a couple of things. Every morning we say a pledge, and that pledge is, excuse me. Every morning we say a pledge for wisdom, justice, and moderation. And interesting, I looked at Webster, and it said this: wisdom is hence having the power and discerning and judging correctly and determining between that which is true and that which is false, between what is fit and what is proper. Justice is the virtue which consists in giving to everyone that which is due, but practically conforming to the law, to the principles of rectitude in dealing with men, with each other. Honesty, integrity in commerce, and in mutual consent. Moderation is the restraint of violent passions and indulging in appetites. Interesting, the issue of moderation in pleasures and exercise. Courage, the quality of mind that enables men to encounter danger and difficulties with firmness and without fear or depression of spirit, valor or boldness. I want to address the issue of gambling, and I want to start with a story. There was a king who said he wanted his people to know the truth. He wanted them to know the truth, and he sent his wisest men out to gather that truth. They brought him back a volume of books, and he said, "Gentlemen, that is too much." He said, "Go again and try. Bring it back less." They brought him another volume, single volume. He said, "They'll never read it. It's too far, it's too thick. Try again." They came back with a booklet. He said, "They still will not hear it." He says, "Bring me back a sentence that will be the wisdom of the ages." They came back with this: there's no free lunch. And I believe that America was founded, I believe that Georgia was founded on a work principle, that you work for that which you have. And gambling has a problem, and we're going to talk about those. It's a bad business. You say, why is it a bad business? Well, in a normal business, a good business is this: you exchange something of value for something else of value. I go into Chick-fil-A. I give them my money, they give me a Chick-fil-A. I go in and ask for a Coca-Cola. They give me a Coca-Cola, I give them money. There's value for value. I buy a car. It's value for value. The issue with gambling is there's always a loser. There can never be a winner without a loser. It's impossible. The game's there. And the other part is this: the house always wins. Number two, it steals an already limited workforce that is needed in Georgia for us to continue to be number one in business. The number one problem in the number one state to do business is labor and workforce. We need those in businesses that are win-win businesses in that respect. Number three, money from gambling is not needed to raise revenues because we already have seen this. We have surpluses, and we are returning money to our citizens even today. Number four, gambling is also addictive to many. Gambling is a disorder that is defined by an uncontrollable urge to keep from gambling despite its toll it takes on your life. Gambling means that you will be willing to risk something you value in hope of getting something even greater. Gambling can stimulate the brain's reward system, and much like drugs and alcohol, it leads to addiction. I was talking to someone and a family member, and he was addicted to gambling. They lost their house, their home, their cars, and ultimately the marriage that went forth. Number five, gambling is financial foolishness. It's not a wise thing. You would never go to a financial planner or someone and say gambling's a good thing because you know what? There are too many other options. It's wasteful of resources that are entrusted to us. Now, gambling apparently is considered dangerous to some degree because you have to be 21 years old to play or even to enter into a horse track. That should say something to us that we recognize there is a danger to gambling. It's not family friendly because you can't take your children to a horse race really, or at least into the areas. This one really bothers me. Number seven is our collegiate sports. We have 2 national championships back to back, and I know there's a lot of money that was placed on those games, but I do not believe that players that are on that field should have the pressure of knowing gambling is available and what's going on there. And here's the issue. There's gambling going on as we speak. There may be gambling going on about this bill, whether it's going to pass or not. I don't know what the odds are, but I can guarantee you they're gambling somewhere. And this phone is gambling. Wherever we go, it's going to be open to our children as we see the sports gamblings come forth. Because of the danger to children, you'll remember I handed out a piece from Mothers Against Gambling. I think we should consider, maybe we ought to have courses in high school that are given and talk about the dangers of gambling. We teach our kids a lot of different things, but there's a gambling addiction that's there, and it's not the best way to do with it. Maybe we need to do that. I don't know. They need to understand that the house always wins. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that gambling is bad for Georgia. It's bad for families. It's bad for children. It's bad for business. And it's just plain bad. It goes against wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage, and the principles that we pledge to on a regular, every morning basis. And I believe it's not good for the citizens of Georgia. And I would ask that you vote no. Thank you.
You have a question, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Senator from 37, you wish to speak?
Gentleman yield.
Yield? Yes, sir.
When my son went to college in another state, coming in as a freshman, his freshman roommate, as a newly turned 18-year-old young man, was wholly and completely addicted to sports betting. As a young 18-year-old. Now, that state, as a minor, sports betting wasn't, quote, legal, but he was wholly or completely addicted coming in as entering college freshman. What would you tell that young man's parents? Why is Georgia doing this if we understand the addictive and corrosive impact that gambling has on not just adults but on young people? What would you tell their parents?
I think when I say this, we know this, that right now we don't need the money as far as the need issue from that standpoint. But with this young man, he's already been addicted to it. He's going to have help. He's going to lose money. And unless he can break the habit, one of the things that was not talked about is how do we deal with those who are addicted. And it is addictive as cocaine. It's as addictive as alcohol in that respect. And therefore, we've got to deal with those people. But you're correct, is that young people are so tied to so many things, and especially because of this, they are tied to their phones. And if you look at the gambling stuff that pops up already on so many of the sites that are open to young people, and Newsweek had an article, if you remember, same thing that was there. We need to be on guard and understand what they're walking into.
Does the gentleman further yield?
I'll yield.
One of the principles of the free enterprise system is that in the marketplace, people serve each other. They work, and that both sides can benefit from a transaction. That by serving you as a customer, you're made better, I'm made better, and that we both can be benefited from it. Is that not how the free enterprise system works?
That is a true statement, sir.
Why is it then that if we're considering casino gambling, where we know statistically the more you play, the more you lose, because the numbers guarantee that, why would citizens what would we as elected officials, applying wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage, want to encourage citizens to participate in an activity that they're going to lose statistically, and it only pays a small margin to our public interests?
Your question,
Yes, sir.
as I hear it, is that what I was saying is even to educate people to know that. I know in one of the committee meetings, I believe, it was said that only 6% of the revenues came from those who were not problem gamblers. That tells us that they prey upon those who have problem gambling. That came out of one of the presentations that was done. And I think we have got to realize this. Georgia is blessed as a state. We are a state where people are coming and they look at our state, and one of the things we don't have is heavy gambling. What happens where that gambling comes into play is what goes on around them as well. It's not good for the community and otherwise.
Gentleman, further yield?
Further year.
Is Georgia 40th or 50th in the nation in which to do business, or are we in a different place in terms of our business-friendly climate and the vibrancy of our economy?
We're the #1 place to do business, sir.
How many years have we been the #1 place in which to do business?
I believe 9 years, sir.
How could we become #1 place in which to do business for 9 straight years without gambling, if gambling's so important to our future? How could that be?
I was reading an article the other day, and it says one of the things that companies look for when they desire to move businesses into state is they look for a family-friendly environment, good educational system, and stability from crime and otherwise. And I believe that Georgia is that. It is stable. It's great. It is a great place to have business. It is a great place to raise a family. And we've seen that with our growth and the people who want to come to Georgia. And that's because of the environment that we have here.
So one last question is, so to the senator, if we apply wisdom, justice, and moderation, wouldn't it be advisable that we have the courage to vote no on Senate Bill 57?
I believe that would be a correct statement. Thank you, Senator.
Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes,
Senator
sir.
Yield.
I yield. To my friend from the 4th,
Yeah. How many children you have?
I have 6 children.
And where did they do? Where did they go to? Any of them go to college? Anything?
All of them went to college.
Did they accept a Hope Scholarship?
Some did, some didn't.
So the lottery funds help fund your children's education.
Small part of it.
Don't you think the lottery funds also help fund a lot of your constituents' children's education?
It funds my constituents' education with the lottery that's there, but I don't believe that more gambling is healthy for our state and for our children.
Do you further yield?
Further yield. Yes, sir.
Would you think that the lottery has been beneficial to Georgia, and the opportunity to expand the lottery would also be beneficial to Georgia?
If I think this, I do not think that chasing more money to situations solves the problem. I would much rather see work-based programs where people are working, and my kids work through school, work through projects. I believe that one of the issues that we have now, we have a failure ratio in the Hope Scholarship that's fairly high. If you look at coming back in the second year, part of that is an issue that a B is not a B across the state of Georgia, and we see people failing after the first year. And I think that's something we need to tighten up and spend our money wisely rather than allowing our dollars to be spent on education when these young people are not committed to get through college. And when it's free money, I hate to say it's kind of like this. When our children are spending mom and dad's money, they spend it pretty freely. But when they have skin in the game, it makes a difference. And I believe that every program we have should have some type of involvement where they play a part in what goes on.
Do you further yield?
Further yield.
Senator, do you feel like that you have done something wrong by allowing your children to accept lottery funds when you're so against gambling? Isn't that just like taking money from the gamblers and spending it for your own personal needs? That's what's so hard for me to understand here.
If it's hard to understand, here's what I will tell you. I pay a lot of taxes anyhow that go to the state. And I figure this, if I can take the law, I'm going to use it to the best. But I had children that went out to school out of state. I got no hope. And there are people who have no hope.
No,
so
you
that
always
portion,
have hope. We
What's
always
that?
have hope. We always have hope.
we always need hope, but I will say this, the other part is this. We need to spend people's money judiciously, which we have through gambling, because there's also many people who, and I just say this, when you go to a convenience food store on payday in a lot of areas, it's sad to see people who are taking their dollars that are cashing their checks and putting money out. I don't think that's the wisest statement and the wisest use of people's money that's been worked for and hard work for.
Well, I'm just very disappointed that you're so against gambling, but you were willing to take money for lottery money for your children. If you were so against it, you should have never taken money from the lottery for your education. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Senator.
sir. Appreciate that.
Senator, you have one more question. Senator
One
from
more
the
question.
21st.
Okay,
Thank you,
you.
Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Senator Gills.
Would you say the Hope Scholarship has been a huge success for our state?
Been a success? Yes, sir.
Would you say that the Hope Scholarship has played a role in us being the #1 state to do business
somewhat
9
I
straight
believe.
years?
Somewhat I
Would you
would
say
believe.
the Hope Scholarship is making it harder and harder to get into Georgia and Georgia Tech? Do you get a lot of phone calls trying to get parents to help daughters or sons get into Georgia?
We've had that talk ourselves about the number of out-of-state students that come in, who are coming in, by the way, without hope many times, and their parents are paying the difference to come into the state of
Would
Georgia.
it be good to fully fund Hope
Fully fund Hope for those that qualify?
and pre-K?
But I think that pre-K, but here's what I'm saying. What a person does not work for, when we give money away, our taxpayers, and we're running close to a 50% ratio that do not return in the second years, we need to be judicious in how we spend the people of Georgia's money that we take from them and how we spend it. There needs to be some type of responsibility to the person that takes the money from the state.
Let me further yield.
Further yield.
Do you think it would be good to regulate sports betting? Right now, we have unregulated sports betting that's being done underground with bookies, and that is more harmful to people, because I think if you had companies that could flag if somebody's got a problem, you might be able to help them before they become addicted. Would you agree with that?
I think this already with the internet, our state borders have already been, we are gambling even by the testimonies that are giving outside into Tennessee and to other states already. If we only regulate Georgia, which is a very small part of what's being owned. If they want to go somewhere else, they can go in other places. That we can't stop. But I believe that the foundational issue is this, that gambling in and of itself does not bring the best results to the state. For young people and for those that are addicted, I believe it's always better to put money into businesses that are win-win situations for the business and for the person that buys, the customer that buys as well. It's a win-win situation. There always has to be a loser in the issue of gambling, always.
I do agree with you, Senator Further Yield. I do agree with you. There are people that go to Tennessee, place their bets, and come back. Who gets that revenue?
They may get it, but there's a price to pay, because they also have to pay for those people who are addicted in their states as well. They've got to follow through on that. There's an infrastructure and that has to be put in place to regulate and do all of those things. I think our workforce being as it is right now, we need people to work in industries that I believe that are beneficial to this state, where it is a win-win situation for the citizens of Georgia and for those people who are buying as well. Those other states, you and I cannot stop people from getting on the internet and betting. That is a big part of what's going on. I don't think we need to add to that.
Last question,
Okay?
Senator Yield.
Yeah.
Would you rather have your constituents bet on something that has 385 million to 1 odds, like the Powerball, or would you rather them be able to bet on a football game on a 3-point spread? What are the odds better for your constituents?
I would rather my constituents be educated well enough to know this, that the House is against them and that their money in a good retirement account and a good mutual fund is a far better bet for them long term, and to use wisdom and discernment and moderation on that portion. Okay.
Senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I yield.
Sometimes when we get these bills, we start flipping through them. You think it's about horse racing, but I see something in here relating to the lottery I want to ask you about. And I, like the senator from the 4th, want to protect the lottery. In lines 58, if you've got the bill in front of you.
I do not have it in front of me, sir. You want
let's
to
get you a
give
copy
that
of
to
the
me?
bill.
Thank you.
Lines 58 through 68, I want to ask if you'll read something with me, see if I'm reading it correctly. Right now, I understand that we require at least 50% of the net proceeds deposited from the previous year to remain in a reserve fund for the lottery for next year. If I'm looking at this bill on lines 61 through 68, we change that. We actually say we're not going to keep 50% of the funds in reserve anymore. We're going to take an average of the previous 3 years and keep that in reserve. Is that how you read that provision?
That's how I would read that, sir.
My question is, I don't know that it's intentional, but I do understand that if we take an average of 3 years rather than 50% of the previous year, we could potentially be reducing the reserve fund for the lottery. Do you follow me there?
I would agree with you, sir.
So that was my thought. But I can also understand where an average of 3 years potentially could be more.
Correct.
Do you agree?
Correct.
So then I flip over and I look at these last few lines and I say through lines 65 through 68, we now are going to require a certain amount of the reserve be expended. So in the past where we've allowed lottery reserves to build up, if it's 50% this year and we don't spend all that, we can tack on it for the next year and continue to build that reserve. Are we now saying that a certain amount of the reserve, the excess reserve fund, has to be spent every year? We can't allow that to continue to build in perpetuity for our future generations?
I would think that the chairman of appropriations is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator from you have one more question,
Okay,
Senator,
one
but
more.
you're always welcome to yield the well whenever you like to. Senator from
okay.
13.
One more. Okay.
Senator Yield,
Senator Yield, yes, sir.
I got a little question about your testimony just then regarding alcohol.
Yes, sir.
Now, I've never asked you, do you partake of alcohol? And that's neither here nor there. But there's a lot of people in this place right here that partakes of alcohol. And you said that alcohol was as dangerous as horse racing. It's killing kids, killing people all along. My question to you is, if that's the case, why don't we just outlaw alcohol? I mean, here's the problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The issue I said is this: it's not dangerous. It's addictive as alcohol. It can be there. Here's the part about it: is that one is it has a financial issue. Still, it is financial money that's addicted and involved. The other is a physical issue where I take alcohol. And to answer your question, I don't drink any alcohol at all. I need all the brain cells I've got, and from what I understand, you lose a few when you take a few drinks, and I can't afford to lose anything, sir.
Senator, I have to agree with you on that. However, Senator, I got one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't you think that the people that are having the problem with the gambling that you're describing, wouldn't you think they have a problem with alcohol also, and drugs and mental issues and other things?
I would agree with the senator that he knows what he's talking about, that when you add all of those together, it's just like this. On our college campuses, I believe that when you have enough problems there with, alcohol, girls, and all the other things, us guys have a lot of problems. Bringing gambling onto our college campuses and collegiate issues are another problem that I don't think we need. And here's what I believe. Georgia is the best place to do business, best place to raise a family, and I want to try to keep it that way.
Senator, since you brought girls into the equation, I'll just sit down.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You have no further questions, Senator. Senator from the 52nd. Wish to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm always full of numbers, so I hope you can follow me on these. I'll talk slow, not that I don't already. I came here in 2013. That first year, the coin-operated amusement machines, COAMs, were up for a vote. I voted against it, and one of the concerns was that I didn't think they had accounting over the machines, among others, that there would be cash payouts. We wouldn't keep up with the money. Everybody was, oh no, we've got that tightened. Well, now there's been all kinds of cash payouts. The crimes are way above what the other areas are. A lot of crime this season the counties are having to deal with. And the solution I've seen come out of the House is, well, let's give them a credit card worth cash. That's how we'll solve the problem. You know, after everybody said it wouldn't. The other thing that happened that year was Governor Nikki Haley in South Carolina banned the machines, and they all came to Georgia. Looking at the numbers over the last year, the Hope Scholarship brought in about $5.5 billion, and of that, we put about $1.5 billion into the lottery fund. Now, $5.5 billion, the COAMs, if they turned in all the money that they said they collected, was $3.65 billion. 5.5 versus 3.65. You got $1.5 billion here. What did they turn in? They turned in 91 million. Well over half the amount, but yet only 1/16 of the revenue. Where you go back to it and it says we have the percentage we're supposed to be doing with the Hope Lottery. It's not up to what it should be, but it's 27%. You go to the COAM, and in the bill it was 10%. But I still can't make that reconcile, 27 and 10%. And the reason being, in the COAM bill, it wasn't 10% of the gross, it was 10% of the net. And the net's a little over 30%. So you got a Hope Lottery out here putting in 27% of the lottery fund. You've got COAMs that are putting in 3% into the lottery fund. The way I look at it, if 10% of those sales, besides all the other problems, if 10% of those sales are coming out of people that would have played the lottery otherwise, we're losing money. We're putting less money into our scholarship fund through these COAMs. So then I was looking at this bill, I'm thinking, is this going to be net gross? Is it going to be 27, 10? What's the number? 49 pages here, that always worries me. And turns out there's not a percent in there at all. They said, we're going to leave that up to those that promulgate the rules to decide what that number is. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I've never seen the promulgators around here do anything that looked good when it was all over with. I don't trust it to leave it to the promulgators. I think this bill needs some work, and with that, I'll yield the well.
Senator's yielded the well. Senator from the 19th. Sure. Come on up. I know you got something on your mind.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senators. I rise to speak to the set of questions that I brought to the Senator from the 16th, and I apologize I wasn't able to address them with the Senator from the 4th, and that's not his fault, it's mine. But I do want to point you to lines 58 through 68 and walk through how it looks like those do. If you're for horse racing, against horse racing, I don't care. But we are making a major policy shift in this bill that doesn't address horse racing at all. Where in the past we've said that lottery reserves should remain at 50% each year and should build on each other each year. So that if we end up in a situation like we did not too distantly in the past, that we do have those lottery reserves to pull from, so the students that we've made commitments to their freshman year have the funds to still have Hope scholarships in their senior year. The policy change in lines 58 through 68, though, they changed that. They say we're not going to put 50% each year. We're going to put 50% on an average of 3 years. Could be more, could be less. But then they do say after you reach a reserve balance in excess of the minimum reserve is 50% from the previous year, that 10% of that excess reserve must be allocated and spent. That's the definition of required frivolous spending. It doesn't say that you have to make sure you fully funded all the scholarships that Hope recipients are asking for. It doesn't say you have to fully fund some needs-based scholarship. It doesn't say you have to take care of everything in the Hope Grant Career Field. It says you have to spend 10% of the excess reserve fund balance regardless. So do we now spend 150% of tuition just because we're required by law by this 10% to do that? Do we build another building, name another name on that building, put new AstroTurf down? Why would we do that? And I don't think this is a policy provision that we have caught yet and realized was in this bill. I don't think it has anything to do with horse racing, but I do think it's something that's been pushed in this building by others for more than the tenure that I've been here. So what I would ask is, hey, because that's there, I can't vote for this. It's a policy change that I can't support, and I would ask you, as you think about this bill, to think about those lines as well. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Senators yielded the will. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? We do have an amendment here. I'm sorry, Senator from 32nd. Speak to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are a lot of issues being debated here, and the one that I raised this morning was about the welfare of the animals. And you know I do a fair bit of animal legislation in this chamber, and there's an organization that was created by Congress, but it's the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, and the bill is actually silent on that, and so the amendment is to try to be sure that the treatment and aftercare of the horses is handled according to the guidelines of HISA, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority. If the bill's to pass, we need to protect the horses. Be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Is there objection for the previous question being ordered? Not objection. Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate the opportunity to bring this bill, and again, the whole purpose of the lottery is to take care of the education of our children, and we need to remember that, and that's what the purpose of it was set up for. So I want to also address the senator mentioned about the gambling stuff. You know, he mentioned about mutual funds and things like that. You know, every time you invest in the stock market, every time you invest in a mutual fund, you have gambled with your money. And I guarantee you, people in this Senate chamber says, I wish I hadn't invested in this. I wish I had not invested in that. That's the thing. The other thing that just in a comical situation, the senator also mentioned that the House always wins. We got to remember the Senate always wins over the House. Thank you, and I appreciate your support for this bill. It's a good bill. It puts anywhere from our estimates are $250 to $300 million into the lottery fund. Thank you, and appreciate your support.
Senators yielded the well. The previous question has been called, and the question is now on the adoption of the amendment, Amendment 1, by the senator from the 32nd. Is there objection to the adoption of Amendment 1 from the senator from the 32nd? Without objection, Amendment 1 is adopted. The Question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machines. Senator from the 4th, for what purpose do you rise?
Yes, sir. Parliamentary inquiry, please, sir.
State your inquiry.
The spending requirement in this bill that the Senator from the 19th referred to has nothing to do with buildings. It's all based on the lottery-based funding.
Senator knows what he speaks. Senator from the 2nd, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true that some of us are addicted to politics and that's why we still hold on to some of our seats?
Senator, I don't doubt your ability in anything, so. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 19, the nays are 37. This bill has failed to receive the requisite constitutional majority and has therefore failed motion. We're going to stand in recess for about 20 minutes here.